This question is a disease question, including a graph. There are lots of graph questions and it can be hard to interpret. So do pause the video, have a go at the questions before I explain how I would look at this question. When you're ready, restart the video. Okay, so heart disease is a non-communicable disease. This means that it cannot be passed from person to person and it is not caused by a pathogen. The graph shows the number of deaths from heart disease each year in the UK. You've got number of deaths from heart disease per year and age range in years here. And we've got male and we've got female. There are a number of things we can notice about this graph. The beigey ones, the grey columns, are male and the black columns are female. So the first thing that we can notice is that up until the age of 75, females have a lower amount of deaths. However, if we keep going, we can see that here at 85, we can see that females have higher deaths. But only at age 85 and above. If we look at the overall amount of numbers, this one is the highest and this one is male, and we can say that actually the peak for men is higher. Our peak for women is here. We found our peak for women. We can also say it's not only higher, but it is also earlier age. What else can this graph tell us? Oh, down here it can tell us that actually our men's deaths start at an earlier age. And again, if we look at the numbers overall, if we add them all together, we could tell that more men die than women of heart disease. So we've had a good look at our graph. Let's see what it's going to ask us about our graph. So the pattern for deaths from heart disease in men is different from the pattern in women. Give two differences between the patterns for men and women. Now, with differences, we need to talk about a comparison. We're comparing men and women. We can either do that by writing this happens for men and this happens for women, or we can use ER words. And what I mean by that is if we look at the first thing that we picked up, that there are less deaths of women up to the age of 75. We can either say women up to the age of 75 have a low death and men up to the age of 75 have a death that is high. We can say that a lower number of women die up to the age of 75. With our second difference, we can pick any one of those. So instead of using an ER word this time, I'm going to use a more or less word. That still indicates you're making a comparison and you're looking at differences. Number 2, more men than women die of heart disease. Moving on to the next question. Suggests 2 reasons, I'm going to underline suggest as well, for the difference in the number of deaths from heart disease in men and women between the ages of 40 and 60. We can see between the ages of 40 and 60 was where the deaths of men are significantly higher than the deaths of women. It is a suggest question, which means you can't look it up in your revision guide. Your teacher has not told you the answer. You have to use the information you've got and apply it to the graph. You have looked at risk factors, and you've looked at risk factors for smoking. Risk factors for heart disease, of which one of those is smoking. If smoking is a risk factor and more men are dying, we could say then that maybe men smoke more and therefore there are more deaths of men. So all we need to say here is our reason for the difference. Either men smoke more or more men smoke. They are 2 different things, and both of them would get you the mark. We're going to have here that more men smoke. As we've said more, and the question is about a difference between men and women, we can leave that without writing about the women afterwards. We know that another factor that is a risk factor for heart disease is stress. Therefore, we could assume that stress may be the cause of some of these deaths, and in this case, maybe men are under more stress. We could also look at activity, because we know that's another risk factor. We could look at genetic factors. We could look at metabolic rate if we wanted to go in that direction. Or we could even go as far as saying maybe men are less likely to visit the doctor, even though they've got symptoms of a heart disease, and therefore the doctor doesn't help them because they don't know there is a problem, and therefore more of them die. There are lots of ways of answering this question, so I'm going to put the answers to both parts of this question underneath the visualizer. Please do pause it and see if you got the right answer. Thank you for listening.